So picture this. It's February 19th, 2014, and three men walk into this empty white building in Mountain View, California. There's nothing remarkable about this building itself. It's just another Silicon Valley office space that's seen better days. But for one of these guys, this moment represents the most profound full circle experience you could imagine. Jan Koum is about to sign the papers that are going to make him a billionaire. His company WhatsApp is being acquired by Facebook for $19 billion. But here's what makes this scene absolutely extraordinary. This building, this unremarkable white structure where he's choosing to finalize the deal, is the former North County Social Services office. This is exactly the same place where 18 years earlier, a 16-year-old Koum stood in line with his mum to collect food stamps. Think about that for a moment. The Ukrainian refugee, who once depended on government assistance to survive, is now signing one of the largest tech acquisitions in history in the very building where he experienced his lowest point. But here's what I find truly remarkable about Jan's story. This isn't just some rags to riches transformation, though that's like incredible enough. It's how he did this. It's how he achieved it by completely rejecting every conventional Silicon Valley playbook. While other entrepreneurs are chasing VC, Jan's actually avoiding it. You have to remember that at this time, competitors are plastering their apps with ads everywhere. Instead, Jan's building a business model around the radical idea that users should never see ads. And while tech leaders are just collecting user data like there's no tomorrow, Jan's designing an app specifically to know as little about his customers as possible. And most incredible of all, the night before signing this life-changing deal, Jan nearly dies in a car accident. He's driving home at 2:30 in the morning after finalizing the details with his investors, and his tire explodes at 75 miles an hour. And he somehow manages to control the car and survive what could have been a fatal incident. And 24 hours later, Jan's a billionaire. This is the story of how an outsider's perspective became Silicon Valley's most valuable asset, and how Soviet-era paranoia about privacy became $1 billion business philosophy, and how the most successful messaging app in history was built by a man who almost quit technology altogether. Welcome to Inflection Moments, the podcast where extraordinary journeys are rewound and replayed through the lens of key turning points. I'm your host, David Franklin, and together we explore the key moments that change everything for the world's most successful individuals. If you're ready to discover what truly sets greatness apart and how those lessons can shape your own story, you're in the right place. I'm absolutely fascinated by Jan Koum, and here's why. He represents something we almost never get to see in Silicon Valley, an authentic, principled leader that never compromised on his values, even when billions were at stake. So think about that for a second. Most tech entrepreneurs, they pivot their values based on what the market's asking for. They start with these ground principles and then, well, let's just say those principles get more flexible as the checks get bigger. But not Jan. He built his entire business around immutable principles, forged in his childhood experiences under Soviet surveillance. And the crazy part, those principles didn't limit his success, they created his success. What makes his story particularly compelling is this. Every major breakthrough came from being an outsider. His Ukrainian background gave him unique insights into privacy that American entrepreneurs just simply couldn't understand. I mean, how do you teach someone to value privacy when they've never lived in a surveillance state? You can't. It's bone deep, living through it, understanding. His immigrant experience taught him to value simplicity and reliability over these flashy features. When you survived on food stamps, you don't build products for people who have everything. You build for people who need things that actually work. And here's something beautiful about the partnership that really scales WhatsApp. His friendship with Brian Acton wasn't built over a networking event or a strategic coffee. It was built over years of ultimate frisbee games and late-night debugging sessions. They created a partnership based on genuine trust and mutual respect rather than opportunistic networking. But maybe most importantly is that Jan's story challenges every assumption that we have about how successful companies are built. While everyone was chasing growth, maximizing ad revenue, and collecting user data like digital gold, WhatsApp succeeds by doing completely the opposite. They ignore growth hacking, they reject ad revenue, and they prioritize the user experience over everything else. In an industry obsessed with disruption, Jan wins by being boringly reliable, and that's exactly what people actually wanted. Today, we're going to explore the 5 pivotal moments that transform Jan from a food stamp recipient into one of the wealthiest people in the world. These aren't just career milestones, these are the inflection points that reveal the fundamental truth about Jan's resilience, his friendship, his ability to innovate, and staying true to his principles when the stakes could not be higher. Each of these moments offers some profound lessons for anyone building something meaningful. But more than that, they show us what's possible when you refuse to compromise on your core values, even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy. So So let's jump into the first key inflection point. This is Yan's escape to America. It's February 1992 in Kyiv, Ukraine. A 16-year-old boy is about to leave everything he knows behind. So let me paint a picture for you of what Yan's childhood looks like, because it's impossible to understand his later obsession with privacy and simplicity without understanding where he comes from. Yan grows up in a world that most Americans can't even imagine. His childhood home near Kyiv lacks basic amenities that we all take for granted. There's no hot water, no reliable electricity, and here's the thing. It's not just the physical hardships that shape him. It's the psychological oppression of living under constant surveillance. So Yan later recalls, I grew up in a society where everything you did was eavesdropped on, recorded and snitched on. I had friends when we were kids getting into trouble for telling anecdotes about communist leaders. So you can start to pick up on the fact that this isn't some abstract political theory for young Yan. This is his daily lived reality. Phone conversations are monitored at this point. It's dangerous to trust people. Privacy isn't a luxury. It's just about surviving. And get this. The conditions at his school tell you everything about the environment he's escaping. So Yan talks about this. Our school didn't even have an inside bathroom. Imagine the Ukrainian winter, minus 20 degrees Celsius, where little kids had to stroll across the parking lot to use the bathroom. Society was extremely closed off. You can read 1984, but living there was experiencing it. His father works construction for the government. He builds hospitals and schools, and he often stays late into the night. But by 92, it's clear that the family needs to leave. The Soviet Union has collapsed at this point. But the economic chaos and the rising anti-Semitism that's happening in post-Soviet Russia at this point makes it impossible for a Jewish family like the Koums. So Yan and his mother pack their belongings. They're going to Mountain View, California with the help of a social support program. The plan is for his father to join them later, but he never makes it. Yan's father dies in 1997, still in Ukraine, never seeing his son again. So when 16-year-old Yan arrives in Mountain View, the American dream feels more like a nightmare. You can see some parallels between this and the last episode with Jensen when he comes over to the US. Big hype about the American dream. But when he gets there, it's a really challenging situation for them. They're living in government-assisted housing. His mom is working as a babysitter while Yan's taking a job sweeping floors at the local grocery store. They're surviving on food stamps. But here's what I love about this moment. Instead of becoming bitter about his circumstances, Yan develops an almost obsessive appreciation for the freedoms he now has. The ability to speak openly, to communicate without fear of surveillance, to build something without government interference. So years later, Yan reflects about this. Instant messaging with my dad back then would have meant everything to me. So Yan believes strongly that communication should be private, reliable, and accessible to everyone, regardless of their economic circumstances. So his immigrant experience teaches Yan something that his future Silicon Valley peers will never truly understand. When you have nothing, every decision has to be essential. Every resource has to be maximized, and there's no room for waste or complexity. So Yan's situation gets even more precarious when his mum is diagnosed with cancer. They're now living on disability payments, but Yan is learning something invaluable about resilience. He's watching his mother maintain dignity despite impossible circumstances. He's learning that true strength isn't about having resources, it's about making the most of whatever you have. So this is all really important because these experiences are going to create the bedrock values that will eventually make WhatsApp different from every other tech company. 22 years later, when Yan chooses to sign his Facebook deal in that same social services building, he's not just making some symbolic gesture. He's acknowledging that everything valuable he built started with an understanding of what it meant to have nothing, and choosing to build something that would never make anyone feel that way again. Let's jump into inflection point number 2. It's 1994, and we're at San Jose State University. Yan's 18 years old at this point, and he's about to hack his way into the tech industry. By the time Yan turns 18, his circumstances are still challenging, but something fundamental has shifted at this point. He develops this obsession about technology, not because it's trendy, the internet is barely a thing in 1994, but because computers represent something profound to him. It's a pure meritocracy. So think about that for a moment. Code doesn't care about your accent. Servers don't discriminate based on your background. Programming languages are universal. For a young man who's experienced discrimination and hardship, this offers him something crazy, a level playing field where results are the only thing that matter. But there's a problem. Yan can't afford a computer science textbook. He certainly can't afford the expensive training programs that his wealthier classmates take for granted. So he develops a system that's part genius and part desperation. He discovers that the used bookstore near campus has a return policy. Buy a programming manual, study it intensively for a few days, then return it for a full refund. He's essentially turning the bookstore into his personal library, consuming knowledge as fast as he can absorb it, then moving on to the next manual. Yan's teaching himself computer networking on the fly, security protocols, systems architecture, all through pure determination and what's probably the most creative financing plan in Silicon Valley's history. And that intensity pays off. By 95, he's good enough to get work as a security tester at Ernst & Young while still attending San Jose State. But even more importantly, he discovers an underground community that's going to change his trajectory forever. He joins this hacker collective called Woo Woo. This isn't like the malicious kind of hacking that you see in the movies. This is more of a group of like genuinely brilliant programmers who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with computer systems. Through Woo Woo, he meets people who are going to be industry legends, including Sean Fanning, who later goes on and co-founds Napster. Here's what I think is kind of beautiful about this moment. Jan is building his technical skills through pure passion. It's not some calculated career move. He's spending hours infiltrating silicon graphics servers, not because someone told him it would be profitable, but because he's genuinely fascinated by how they work. He's developing the deep technical expertise that's going to allow him later to build WhatsApp's incredibly robust infrastructure. In my mind, this is genuinely someone that's following something that he loves to do. But 97 brings a moment that will define everything that follows. Through his work at UI, Jan gets assigned to do a security audit at Yahoo. This is where he meets a guy called Brian Acton, a Yahoo employee who immediately recognizes something special in this young Ukrainian programmer. So Acton says, you could tell he was a bit different. He was really no nonsense, asking straightforward questions. So while other consultants are trying to impress clients with complex presentations, Jan focuses entirely on just doing the actual work. He finds real vulnerabilities, he provides practical solutions, and he delivers results. The connection with Acton is immediate and profound. They share what Acton later describes as a complete inability to bullshit. In an industry increasingly dominated by marketing and hype, they're both old school engineers who believe that good work speaks for itself. So fast forward 6 months, Yahoo offers Jan a full-time position as an infrastructure engineer. He's still at San Jose State when Yahoo co-founder David Filo calls him during class to help with a server emergency. So Jan tells Filo, I'm in class. And Filo responds, what the fuck are you doing in class? Get your ass into this office. So this is the moment when Jan makes a decision that's going to seem crazy to his family and friends. He drops out of college to focus entirely on his career at Yahoo. Remember, this is an immigrant family that values education above everything else. His mum brought Soviet notebooks to America because she believes so deeply in the power of learning. And now her son is abandoning all of that for a job at a company most people have never heard of. But Jan understands something that his critics don't. He's not abandoning education. He's just choosing a different kind of classroom. At Yahoo, he's learning from some of the smartest engineers in the world. He's working on systems that are going to serve millions of users, and he's building expertise that no textbook could provide. More importantly, in my opinion, he's developing the partnership with Brian that's eventually going to change global communication. They're not just colleagues at this point. They're becoming genuine friends, bonding over late-night debugging sessions and shared frustration with all the corporate bureaucracy. And this self-education journey teaches Jan several lessons that are going to prove crucial when he builds WhatsApp. And most importantly of all, is that he learns that being an outsider can be an advantage if you're willing to work harder and think differently than everyone else. So while his peers are going down conventional paths, Jan is creating his own curriculum based on his own curiosity and an immigrant's determination to succeed. So let's jump into inflection point number 3. We're now at the Yahoo headquarters in Sunnyvale, California. 2 engineers are building more than just software. They're building a partnership that's going to reshape global communication. When Jan joins Yahoo, he's entering a company that is at the absolute peak of its influence. Yahoo is the gateway to the internet for millions of people. It's exciting and it's growing at breakneck speed, and it should be the perfect place for a young engineer to build his career. But then 2000 brings devastating personal news. Jan's mum, who's been battling cancer while working as a babysitter to support them, finally loses their fight. Suddenly, Jan is completely alone in America. His father died 3 years earlier, still in Ukraine, and at 24, he's got no family, limited savings, and the profound grief that comes with losing the person who sacrificed everything to give you the opportunities. So for a second, let's go back to Jan's relationship with Brian at Yahoo. So while Jan is grieving, Brian invites Jan to his home. So they go off skiing together, they're playing ultimate frisbee in Silicon Valley, and Acton becomes the family that Jan lost, providing emotional support during the darkest period of his life. Jan later reflects, Brian was there for me. Truly, there for me. This is the kind of loyalty that goes beyond the workplace. They're building this trust through shared experiences that have nothing to do with technology or business success. Over the next 7 years, they watch Yahoo navigate the dot-com boom and bust. Acton invests heavily during the bubble and loses millions when it collapses. But instead of becoming bitter, he develops a deeper skepticism about hype-driven business models. Jan, meanwhile, is watching the company he joined become increasingly focused on ad revenue rather than the user experience. By 2005, both men are growing frustrated with corporate life, but for philosophical reasons that go beyond your typical workplace complaints. Specifically, they're seeing Yahoo prioritize ads over user privacy and watching the company become more bureaucratic and less focused on building tools that genuinely help people. So you already see where this is starting to go, going back to Jan's roots in the USSR. Their friendship deepens around shared values that are becoming increasingly rare in Silicon Valley. They both believe that good software should just be simple, reliable, and respectful of users. They both hate the way that ads clutter the user experience. But most importantly, we go back to this comment we had earlier, that they both maintain what Acton describes a complete inability to bullshit. Again, a complete ability to bullshit. They share authenticity. When they work together on projects, there's no ego, there's no hidden agendas, no politics. They just focus entirely on solving problems as efficiently as possible. So by 2007, they both reached the same conclusion. Yahoo is not the company they joined anymore. The bureaucracy has come suffocating, and the focus on ad revenue feels increasingly compromised. They want to build something meaningful, but the corporate structure at Yahoo makes that impossible. So in 2007, they make the decision to quit Yahoo on the same day. Keep in mind, they're walking away from senior positions, a healthy stock option package, and steady paychecks to pursue something completely undefined. Their families think they're crazy. Former colleagues assume they'll be back within 6 months, but instead they do something that seems really irresponsible. They spend a year traveling through South America, just playing ultimate frisbee and having long conversations about what they want to build next. And during their travels, they both apply for jobs at 2 companies, Facebook and Twitter. And of course, both get rejected. The irony is just so good here. Facebook are eventually going to pay $19 billion for the company they're about to create, and Twitter is going to spend years trying to compete with it. So years later, Acton's reflecting on this moment. He jokes, "We were part of the Facebook reject group." But at the time, these rejections are devastating. They're both in their 30s, unemployed, and watching their savings dwindle. The pressure to take any available job is just enormous. But these rejections also clarify something important. If they're going to build something meaningful, they got to do it themselves. Corporate structures are always going to prioritize short-term revenue over long-term value creation, and the ad-driven business models they've grown to hate are not going away anytime soon. They're becoming the industry norm. But at this point, Jan and Brian have a really strong partnership, and they've forged it through these shared values based on genuine friendship during both good times and the personal lows. So when Jan eventually creates WhatsApp, he knows exactly who he wants as his co-founder, the person that stood by him when he had nothing, who shares his vision of what the technology should be, and who has proven over a decade that their word actually means something. WhatsApp succeeds because it's built on an authentic trust between 2 people who genuinely like each other and respect each other and share the same principles. And in an industry full of opportunistic partnerships and mercenary relationships, they're going to create something rare, which is a true business partnership based on genuine human connection. All right, we're moving. Let's go into inflection point number 4. It's now June 2009, Santa Clara, California. A failing app is going to be the global phenomenon through one moment of accidental genius. By early 2009, Jan thinks he might have made the biggest mistake of his career. So picture this, it's been 2 years since he left Yahoo, and his savings are disappearing faster than his confidence. The iPhone is interesting, sure, and the App Store seems promising, but Jan's first attempt at building something meaningful is going spectacularly wrong. So Jan calls the app WhatsApp, which is like a play on WhatsApp, which is funny because I don't think many people know that, including me until I started researching this. And it's supposed to let people share status updates with their contacts. So think like proto-Facebook statuses, but mobile and simple. So Jan incorporates WhatsApp on his birthday, absolutely convinced that he's onto something that's going to revolutionize communication. But he's wrong. Spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. The app launches in May of 2009, and it's a total disaster. It's crashing constantly, it's draining iPhone batteries in hours, and the UI is just totally confusing. Worst of all, nobody wants it. After Jan develops this for months, WhatsApp has maybe 10 active users, and most of them are just friends using it out of pity. So at this point, Jan's ready to quit. He's 33 years old, unemployed, and running out of money, and his friends are starting to suggest that maybe it's time to just get a real job. Even Brian, who's been supportive throughout this whole process, is beginning to question whether this startup thing is actually realistic for 2 guys in their 30s. But then Apple does something that's going to change everything. In June 2009, Apple releases iOS 3.0, which includes push notifications. For most developers, this is just another feature to maybe implement someday. But Jan sees something completely different. He realizes that push notifications could transform his failing status app into something genuinely useful. If users get notified every time someone in their network updates their status, suddenly the app becomes much more engaging. He quickly updates WhatsApp to leverage these push notifications. And now whenever someone changes their status, at the gym, in a meeting, battery about to die, all their contacts get an immediate alert. And the effect that this has on the company is instant. So Alex Fishman, Jan's friend, who's been hosting gatherings for the Russian-speaking community in San Jose, decides to try the updated app with his mates. They start receiving notifications when people update their statuses, and something unexpected happens. They just find it fun. But then they start doing something that Jan never anticipated. Instead of just posting personal status updates, they begin using the status feature to communicate with one another. So someone posts WhatsApp, and the response is to change your status by just saying, "Not much, just working." It's crude, it's inefficient, and it's completely unintended, but it's working. So at this point, Jan is just sitting in his townhouse in Santa Clara when he realizes what's happening. His Russian friends are not just sharing status updates, they're having conversations with each other. They've accidentally discovered a way to send messages without paying SMS fees. They're using his app as an instant messaging service. This is the moment when everything changes. Jan understands that he hasn't just built a status app that's failing, he's accidentally created the foundation for a messaging platform that could actually succeed. So Jan later explains this. Being able to reach somebody halfway across the world instantly on a device that's always with you, that's powerful. But it's more than just the technology that excites him. It's the human behavior he's observing. People want to communicate simply and affordably. They don't want ads or games or complex features. They just want to reach the people they care about. So Jan calls Brian immediately. He goes, "You got to see this. I think I know what we need to build." So within weeks, they're completely redesigning the app. WhatsApp 2.0 launches with proper messaging functionality, and the response is immediate and dramatic. The handful of users suddenly becomes 250,000. Messages per day go from 0 to thousands. And the app that was dying is suddenly growing faster than they can handle. This push notification pivot teaches Jan that the best products often emerge from observing how people actually use the technology, not from trying to predict how they should use it. Users don't want complex features. They just want simple tools that solve real problems. And this becomes a core principle for WhatsApp. Watch what users do, not what they say they want. Repeat that. Watch what users do, not what they say they want. That is such a powerful principle, in my opinion, and I think it applies to pretty much any business. That push notification moment also validates Jan's perspective on communications. His Russian friends embrace WhatsApp because it solves a problem they understand intimately, staying connected with people across distances without paying excessive fees and without being spied upon the whole time. Most importantly, this pivot proves that persistence through failure can lead to these huge breakthroughs, but only if you're paying attention to the right signals. Jan was ready to quit when he was measuring the wrong metrics, but once he started measuring user behavior instead of user adoption, everything changed. The failing status app becomes the foundation for the fastest growing startup in Silicon Valley history, but only because Jan was humble enough to let his users teach him what they actually needed. All right, last inflection point. It's now February 2014. A billionaire is about to complete the most symbolic business transaction in Silicon Valley history. By early 2014, WhatsApp has become something that nobody in the tech industry saw coming. Nearly 500 million active users, 50 billion messages processed daily, the largest messaging platform in human history, built by a team of just 55 people. And here's the part that makes Silicon Valley executives lose sleep at night. They're generating this massive scale while spending almost nothing on marketing and refusing to run any ads. 0 ads. In an industry obsessed with monetizing user attention, they've built the most valuable communication platform by completely ignoring conventional revenue streams. So Mark Zuckerberg has been pursuing Jan for 2 years, ever since they sat down for lunch together. What started as these casual meals have evolved into serious acquisition conversations. And at this point, Facebook needs WhatsApp desperately. They need the international reach. They need the user engagement. But more importantly, Zuckerberg recognizes that WhatsApp represents something Facebook can never build internally: authentic, privacy-first messaging that users actually trust. The negotiations have been intense because Jan and Brian are not the typical Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who will compromise their principles for the right price. They've made it crystal clear that any acquisition must preserve WhatsApp's core values: no ads, no games, no data mining, and no compromise on user privacy. All of those are non-negotiables. So Facebook agrees to terms that seem impossible. $19 billion in total, $12 billion in Facebook stock, $4 billion in cash, and $3 billion in restricted stock. It's not just the largest tech acquisition in history. It's validation that a privacy-first, ad-free business model can create extraordinary value. But the night before signing, Jan nearly dies. Driving home at 2:30 after finalizing deal details with Sequoia, his tire explodes at 75 miles an hour. The car goes completely out of control, but somehow, Jan manages to avoid what should have been a fatal collision. 24 hours later, he's scheduled to become a billionaire. On February 19th, instead of meeting at Facebook headquarters or some swanky Silicon Valley law office, Jan's going to make a crazy request. He wants to sign the papers at a specific location in Mountain View, the former North County Social Services Office. This is the same building that's been empty for years, but it holds profound personal meaning to Jan. This is where he once stood as a 16-year-old, in line with his mum to collect food stamps. This is the same building where they received government assistance to survive their first years in the US. The place that represents his lowest point is where he chooses to celebrate his biggest achievement. Just think about that symbolism for a moment. Jan arrives with Brian and Jim Goetz from Sequoia Capital. They walk through the empty building, past the windows where welfare recipients once waited for help, to a conference room where three men are about to finalize one of the most significant business transactions in US history. As Jan signs the papers that make him worth $6.8 billion after taxes, he's not just completing a business deal, he's closing a circle that began 22 years ago with a teenage refugee who had nothing but determination and his mum's love. Jan has chosen this location to honor his journey and acknowledge the government assistance that made his success possible. He's also making a statement about what the US represents at its best, a place where circumstances at birth do not determine your ultimate destination. And Brian, whose friendship made this partnership possible, receives approximately $3 billion after taxes. For two men who were rejected by Facebook in 2007, I just love this irony. The company that wouldn't hire them just paid them $19 billion for the business that they built. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this moment isn't the money. It's how Jan and Brian have managed to keep their principles throughout this entire process. As part of the deal, WhatsApp is going to remain ad-free. User privacy is going to remain paramount. And the simple, reliable experience that made the app successful, that's going to be protected. In my opinion, this acquisition represents more than just financial success. This is proof that principled entrepreneurship can compete with growth at any cost Silicon Valley culture. Jan has built a company that reflects his deepest values: respect for privacy, commitment to simplicity, and the belief that technology should serve human connection rather than exploit it. And as they leave the former welfare office, Jan has completed one of the most remarkable transformations in American business history. From a food stamp recipient to a tech billionaire. I love that, and I want to repeat it. From a food stamp recipient to a tech billionaire. From surveillance state refugee to privacy advocate. And from a self-taught programmer to the leader of a company that connects over 1 billion people. The values forged in the rough times during childhood haven't been compromised by his wealth as an adult. But there's one more chapter to this story that makes it even more meaningful. So in 2018, when Facebook began pushing for changes that are going to compromise WhatsApp's privacy principles, Jan makes another principled decision. He walks away from billions more in unvested stock options rather than compromise the values that made WhatsApp special. The food stamp office signing wasn't just about celebrating success. It's about committing to never forget the principles that made the success meaningful in the first place. So let's take a step back and think about some of the common threads that tie this all together. As I've studied Jan's journey from a Ukrainian refugee to a Silicon Valley billionaire, there's something fascinating that emerges. There are a few common threads that explain not just his success, but why his approach created something so different in the tech industry. And here's what makes these patterns so powerful, in my opinion. They're completely replicable. You don't need to be an immigrant or a programming genius to apply them. The first one I think is important is that adversity is your competitive advantage. And this might sound like motivational crap, but hear me out. Every major challenge in Jan's life became a source of insight that his competitors literally could not access. Growing up under Soviet surveillance, this gives him a visceral understanding of privacy that American entrepreneurs couldn't develop intellectually. I mean, how do you teach someone to value privacy when you've never lived in a surveillance state? You just can't. It's not knowledge, it's just lived experience. What about living on food stamps? They taught him to value simplicity and efficiency in ways that privileged founders never learn. When you've got to survive with nothing, you instinctively know what's essential and what's just nonsense. What about being an immigrant? That showed him that reliable communication across the world wasn't just convenient, it's essential for maintaining those human connections. And while other tech leaders just talk about democratizing communication, Jan actually understands what that means because he's lived without it. His childhood experience of monitored phone calls with family members wasn't just abstract market research, it was personal pain that motivated him to build something better. The second common thread between these key moments in Jan's life, I think, is the power of this patient friendship over this opportunistic networking that a lot of people adopt. And I think this one hits deep. Silicon Valley is famous for these transactional relationships. People connect because they think that they might be useful to each other someday. Jan and Brian built something completely different, which is a friendship based on genuine compatibility in these shared values. They had a 9-year working relationship at Yahoo, all these late nights, debugging, ultimate frisbee games, and Brian's support when Jan lost both of his parents. So by the time that they started WhatsApp, they've already proven their loyalty to each other. And this foundation changes everything. It allows them to make decisions based on long-term principles rather than these short-term pressures. So when investors are pushing for ad revenue, they can resist that pressure because their partnership's not dependent on external validation. The next takeaway that I see from these key moments in Jan's career is this innovation through just observing what users do. And I think this is where most startups completely screw up. WhatsApp's breakthrough comes from something that sounds simple, but is incredibly hard to do. actually listening to how people use their products instead of forcing them to adapt to their vision. The push notification pivot wasn't the result of strategic planning or market analysis. It was Jan noticing that his Russian friends were using his status app in unexpected ways. Instead of correcting their misuse of the product, he redesigns it around this behavior. So this humility about user feedback becomes WhatsApp's secret weapon. While competitors are just adding features based on what they think users want, WhatsApp strips away everything except what users actually need. This counterintuitive approach of removing complexity instead of adding it creates the most engaging messaging experience in the world. The fourth common thread, and I think this is a super powerful one, is letting your values guide you in moments of uncertainty. Most people think of business values as marketing concepts or like wishy-washy internal culture guidelines. That's a big mistake. For Jan and Brian, their principles become their edge. And by designing systems that collect like minimal user data, they avoid the privacy scandals that plague their competitors. And what's powerful about this is it's truly authentic. You can't fake an authenticity about caring about privacy if you've never lived in a surveillance state. And taking a step back, there's this overarching theme here, I think, that ties everything together, which is that Jan's unfair advantage is his authenticity. Jan built WhatsApp to solve problems he personally understood with a partner he genuinely trusted, using principles he actually believed for users whose needs he'd experienced himself. And this authenticity creates something that Silicon Valley rarely produces, a billion-dollar company that users actually love and competitors cannot replicate. WhatsApp succeeded because it was real in ways that focus group products could never be. And really, this outsider's perspective that makes Jan different is what makes WhatsApp irreplaceable. So I think it's worth thinking about some ways that you and I can apply this, and this comes straight out of Jan's playbook. Pick one thing that you're building or trying to improve, like maybe it's your relationships, your business, whatever matters most. Then spend time actually watching how people interact with it, not how you think they should interact with it. Here's what this looks like practically. If you're building something, don't ask users what features they want. Watch how they actually use what you've already built. If you're improving a relationship, working on a particular relationship, pay attention to when the conversations feel the most natural rather than forced. The key is observation without judgment. Don't just try and correct like wrong usage or push people towards your preferred outcome. Just notice the gap between what your assumptions were and reality. Jan's billion-dollar insight came from this. It came from watching his friends use his failing app as an accidental messaging service instead of correcting their misuse. He rebuilt the entire product around their actual behavior. So find your version of that insight. Think about how people are showing you what they actually need instead of what you think they want, because your breakthrough might be hiding in plain sight. Jan's story challenges everything we think we know about success in Silicon Valley. WhatsApp connects over 2 billion people because it solves real problems with authentic values. This, in my opinion, is the most inspiring aspect of Jan's journey, about how he stayed true to his principles even when billions of dollars were at stake. The values that Jan gathered as a kid weren't abandoned when he achieved success as an adult. The commitment to privacy learned under the Soviet surveillance was not compromised for ad revenue. It was about commitment to his values that were just in his blood. Thank you for joining us on Inflection Moments. If today's story sparked a new perspective or challenged your thinking, share it with someone ready for a shift of their own. So until next time, keep building and talk soon.